Welcome to Embracing What is Real. I'm your host, Helane Lipson. Embracing What's Real is the forum to explore the nature of reality and the impact our current belief systems have on our lives. All of our deep-rooted old beliefs are what many of us use to judge ourselves and our actions. Our current belief systems impact every single choice we make. So when we feed our spirit with new, empowering ideas about the meaning of life, the meaning of our lives change.
Hello, this is Helane Lipson on In5D Radio, and welcome to Embracing What is Real. Our special guest today is Barbara Lamb. Barbara is a licensed marriage and family therapist, certified hypnotherapist and regression therapist, and she's an expert on crop circles. In 1991, Barbara began working with ET experiencers, people who had encounters with extraterrestrial beings. She has counseled and conducted regressions with more than 780 of these people, totaling at least 3,000 regressions. 25 of these cases are included in her book, Alien Experiences. Barbara has also been a prominent crop circle researcher since 1990. She researches and conducts tours to crop circles in England each summer. Barbara has also co-authored the book Crop Circles Revealed, Language of Light Symbols with Judith K. Moore, and she is a highly sought lecturer on the subject of the extraterrestrial phenomenon and on the subject of crop circle phenomenon. She's here with us today on Embracing What is Real. I'd like to welcome Barbara Lamb. Hello, Barbara.
Hello. Thank you very much. What a lovely introduction.
Oh, I'm just delighted. I am so glad that you could be with us today.
Me too.
I actually heard you speak at the Cosmic Reunion Conference at the end of March, and
yes.
So I've been counting the days for this interview. So I'm just happy that we're here now. You know.
Well, good. I am too. Yes.
Barbara, so I'd like to start by asking you how this crop circle ET phenomenon started for you. You know, you were a marriage and family counselor. So can you tell me about some of your first regressions where information about ETs came out?
Okay. And I'd like to do a little bit of backup about that, if we could. And just simply, first of all, to add to the figure that you mentioned about having regressed 700 some odd people, you said, well, that's a figure from probably a couple of years ago. That's not your fault. And
I took it off the website.
yeah, I have to update things here. So it's over 900 individuals now whom I've regressed to extraterrestrial experiences. And that really is quite a lot when you think about it. But I will back up a little bit quickly, hopefully, that I got into the regression work when I was already a licensed psychotherapist. And around the mid-1980s, I started getting a few years of training in doing past life regression therapy. And during that time, I didn't even know that there was such a thing as extraterrestrial encounters, but I was doing a fair amount of the past life therapy regressions, and that was very, very interesting and rewarding. And then, along about 1988, my last trainer, that is my trainer of my last module of past life therapy, she noticed, or she said that there might be a chance when those of us who are doing this work would find that a client would come with complaints about some unusual beings taking them away for a while or visiting them in their bedroom, and they had a lot of mixed feelings about that, and sometimes not only confusion but even trauma, and that, you know, somebody might want to come and regress to find out what the details of that sort of thing was. Well, at that point, in 1988, I had never, ever heard of such a thing. So I was stunned. And then, even more stunning, was just right after she said that, in the next second or two, I heard a big, insistent voice in my head saying, "Pay attention to this, Barbara. You will be doing this." In other words, I'd be regressing people who've had these strange visitations. So I was just stunned, amazed, and didn't know what to do with that. And we went on with the rest of the training. I didn't even ask any questions. I wasn't ready to. And then for about, another 3 years or so, I tried to find out if I thought that there was any reality to this UFO extraterrestrial talk. And I went to a lot of lectures and to some video presentations. And it took me about 3 years of doing that. And then I concluded that, okay, I think this really does happen to some people. I think it's real. And if it should happen to someone who comes to me, I think I could handle it with regular regression techniques. So right after I decided that, in fact, the same day, I met a woman who said she'd like me to work with her 21-year-old daughter who was having those peculiar encounters, and they were very distressing for the daughter. So I worked with her for 6 sessions, and we did regressions to the details of those extraterrestrial experiences. And she benefited from that so much. She said she had concluded that she was privileged and proud to be chosen by those beings, that it must be a very special program of some sort, and she didn't mind participating now, and she lost her fear, and she was really going to be okay. She had also experienced being healed by a UFO that shot a blue beam of light down to her as she was running across a field, and that really cured her of some persistent back pain that she had had. So that probably was part of her positive feeling that she ended up with. So that was a good start for me in the spring of 1991. And then since then, more and more people have somehow found their way to me to do regressions to their extraterrestrial encounters, or in many cases to find out if some of the odd things that have happened really were extraterrestrial encounters. Sometimes, people wonder for many, many years, even decades, about whether they are having these experiences. They always have a reason to wonder. There are certain clues, and when they begin to learn a little bit more about it from other people, and they put those clues together, then it looks like, wow, maybe this has happened to them, and they'd like to know. So this also applies to people who have a fairly close UFO sightings. And I have met a few thousand individuals in different locations who have claimed to have seen a very impressive vehicle in the sky, and sometimes coming pretty close to the ground or even on the ground. And those people wonder if there was anything more to the experience than just simply seeing a craft like that close up, that maybe they've had some experience. And usually if it's that close a sighting, it usually turns out that they have actually had a personal experience that they don't remember, but it comes out in regression.
Barbara, I don't think ETs just randomly choose a particular person to either abduct or work with. There's some kind of connection between that person and the ETs.
I agree with you. Good for you. I think that that's a good thought. And many people come to regress on the subject of, why am I picked for this, or why am I experiencing this and other people I know are not? What is it about me? And so I call that the why me question. And when we have done a regression on that for those people, two kinds of things are likely to happen. One is that the person will find in the regression that they themselves were that type of being in a previous lifetime, and that these beings actually sent her, with her agreement, to incarnate as a human in this lifetime. But there's still a connection between them, and that's one of the reasons why the beings will visit that person, because that person is one of their own, so to speak, although in another lifetime. There's still the connecting link. So that kind of reason comes through frequently. And the other one is that the person will go back to his or her soul state of being, that soul state as a spirit that we're in, all of us, just before we get conceived and come into this physical lifetime on Earth. And in that spirit state, they're discussing, as a spirit, discussing with other spirits what sort of things would be important for the sake of that soul to come into this lifetime to experience. And so they choose the place they're going to be born, and the parents and the family and certain key people they will know once they are here on Earth. And sort of the main themes that they're working on and the main purposes. And into that discussion, that planning session, shall we say, will come some spirits of extraterrestrial beings saying, we know that you're thinking of going to Earth as a lifetime as a human, and would you agree to occasionally let us come and work with you? We have various things we're trying to do with humans, trying to learn about them, experiment on them, and so forth. Would you agree to be one of the people who will do that? And on that spirit level, the soul of that person has agreed. And, not knowing necessarily how they're going to feel about it once they're in a human life. But they do agree in theory. Okay, you can do that if it's just once in a while. And then, of course, when they are born and a little child, and then grow through their life experiences, they've typically forgotten what they had agreed as a soul. They forget all the things they agreed to as a soul. And then they find themselves having these experiences, and at that point they certainly wonder why. But in this type of regression, when the person learns that they made a decision on the soul level, it does help to a considerable extent. They don't feel like such a victim, such a hapless, unlucky person who happens to be snatched up by these beings for no good reason. There actually is a reason, and on that other level they have actually given agreement. So I don't think it's a random thing either that people are chosen. It seems to me that people who have frequent UFO sightings, especially really close sightings, are having them because the extraterrestrials are coming for them, for one thing, on that occasion, or the extraterrestrials who fly those ships want them to know, want them to think about the fact that there are ships and other beings, and that maybe they're even having experiences.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, I just came back from Mount Shasta, and I was with 5 other people, and we actually saw a ship. That was the very first time that
Good.
I had ever seen anything. It was almost like I was looking up at the sky, and then somebody, but I didn't see it. I was looking right at it, I guess, but I didn't see it. And then somebody said, "Oh my God, look at that! Look at that!" And then all of a sudden, then I saw it, and all of us saw it. There was no saying that it was a dot in the sky. It wasn't something far away. later
Mm.
on somebody had said or felt it was a Pleiadian ship,
Huh.
and then it disappeared into thin air.
Yes, well, that's the thing, you see, that they do seem, many of them anyway, to come in from another dimension. They may be multi-dimensional, which is hard for many of us to really fathom, but they do seem to exist even with their material body, like a metal craft. They do seem to exist in one dimension and then be able to pop into ours. I have seen that happen too. And you think, gee, did I really see that?
Yeah.
Because it's so quick. But they do, and then sometimes they'll stay in our dimension for a considerable period of time. And there are loads of videos and photos of that. And then, very typically, I've heard so many people say that they're watching one, and then just suddenly it disappears, or they might say it blinks out, or it shuts off, or it pops out again. Different ways to describe the same thing. So that's wonderful. I
I
think that you
know,
saw
because
that.
I had wanted to see one for a long time. I live in South Florida. I'm like, come and see me, come and see me. But no one
Hmm.
has ever come and seen me. And so it was a thrill for me. And I was also so glad I was with a group of people that
Oh
saw
yes,
the exact same thing and that were able
absolutely.
to validate what I saw. Or I might have said, oh, I don't even know. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did. But then when everybody saw it, so, now
Yes.
I have a question for you. You were talking about someone who was healed by the blue light, by an
Hmm.
AT group, and that was one of the first people that you regressed in that way. I'm
Yeah.
just curious, what are some of the things experienced, some of the other things experienced by some of the people that you regressed? What kind of contact? What happened when
Yeah. Well,
when they
that's
talk about?
It's such a great question, and it's a comprehensive question because there are so many things that can happen and do happen for people in these encounters. I want to continue first with the idea that you just mentioned about healing, because many people find that in an encounter they're on a medical table of some sort, and they might worry about that at the beginning. Oh my gosh, what's happening to me? What are they doing? But as the experience goes on, they realize that the beings are actually healing them of something that's wrong, like a heart condition or a lung condition or cancer somewhere in the body, or a knee problem, or kidney failure, or you could name it. People have been healed, and I mean completely lastingly healed of some of those things by the beings standing around the medical table that the person is lying on. And also sometimes the beings will telepathically tell the person that they have a problem with something, like, let's say, a problem with their colon, and that they need to see a doctor and get that checked on. So they'll either heal it themselves, or they'll, give warning so that the person will find an earth doctor to tend to it. So that's one of the kinds of things that happens. And then just plain old medical exams happen very typically for so many people who have these encounters. And in some cases, it seems, we may not have the truth of it, but it appears as if the medical exam is mostly for the benefit of those beings doing it. For instance, the little gray beings tend to do a lot of this type of work, and it seems as if they are doing it for their own information. They'd like to
Yeah,
know how the
yeah.
physical body works. They'd like to know about our digestive systems, our hearts, our reproductive systems, and our skin and our hair and all that, our blood. So they may take little samples of these things and for their own testing, their own knowledge. And so it seems like they're not doing that to help human beings, but I'm not certain about that. I think that there's a possibility, anyway, that some of this testing is eventually going to be used to help that person. Although it may not appear like it at first, it appears sort of matter of fact and cold-hearted. Even they're just going to do what they're going to do, and then physically, some of these extraterrestrials like to put an implant, a little tiny object, in the person who's been taken, and then people describe these implants. We know that there are implants. You can see them in an X-ray, and some of them have been surgically removed from a wonderful surgeon in Southern California named Roger Lear. I've been present at several of those surgical removers of implants, and so they send them off for analysis too, and they realize that they're very unusual little objects. They're very small, about the size of a BB from a BB gun, or about the size of a sunflower seed heart. You know, that littlest part of the sunflower seed. They may be crystalline in structure. They might be a combination of metals. They might even be a combination of fiber and wire, in one case that I know of. And so we do know implants are real, and people do experience often that they are placed in the body somewhere during one of these abductions by the extraterrestrials. So when a person is aware that he has an implant and he can feel a little tiny lump under his skin that moves around just a slight bit when he touches it, and then when it's shown on an X-ray and then it's removed, we definitely know, okay, this is something scientifically real.
Barbara,
So, yeah.
what about, is that the only type of implants? I mean, the physical implants, or are there other ways that people come in or have implants that are not even physically seen, like this in a BB or sunflower kernel?
That's an excellent question. And yes, there are people who claim that they have ethereal implants. They're non-physical. They're kind of like the next dimension that's very much similar to the physical, but it isn't quite physical. So some people claim to have those, and I've heard that of a couple of people who claim that they can release those ethereal implants. I, frankly, have not done that particular work. I can only get that by hearsay. But it does seem that perhaps there is that type of thing going on too.
Yeah.
Etheric implants, just like, and that might be possible because of the fact that these beings sometimes are not seen and then they suddenly appear and they suddenly disappear. And then the UFOs, as you were saying, can suddenly appear and suddenly disappear. So I think that they're probably coming in from a different dimension in which we do see them, the third dimension, and then they go into the other dimension where we don't see them, but they're still existing. I think it's the same thing with some of the beings as well as some of the ships, that they have the ability to do that. So if that's true, then it could be true, it seems to me, that implants, some of them could be sort of like another dimensional object, or ethereal, as we might say, placed into the person's physical body. And that maybe because it's another dimensional thing, ethereal, it could be removed in a certain process by the person who knows how to do that.
Yeah. I actually had an experience like that. I had felt that I had these ethereal implants, and somebody had actually removed them. And I didn't, I didn't know what this was about, but I do know that when it was done, my vision had changed. My vision, green looked
Hmm.
different than I'd ever seen green.
Oh, really?
And drops of waters on the trees looked, so it actually changed my sight. And
Mm.
just, it just calmed me down. Really, the main difference that I noticed is the way that I was able to see.
Hmm.
And it actually, I felt like these particular implants, it changed the way that I was able to digest food
Oh,
and
really?
helped me metabolize food differently.
Huh.
It was almost there to, it was a small implant to impact that. And I had noticed a difference. I was asking this question. I wanted to know. I know it wasn't in my own mind only because my actual vision of color and the
Hmm.
spectrum of color that I was then able to see
Mm-hmm.
changed.
Well, that's just amazing. I know that that happens when cataracts are removed from people's eyes, that not only do they see more clearly and can read better than they had before, but that they see colors more vividly. I had never realized that until my husband had a cataract taken out. And immediately when the bandages were off, he said, oh my gosh, I can see the colors so vividly. And he was able to read better too, especially after the second one was removed. But well,
Wow.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So in your case, these were something that you sensed were there, but you didn't see them in an X-ray or in any
Yeah,
way
not in an
visually.
X-ray or anything like that. But I will tell you this, as I'm listening to you talk about abductees, my mother is terrified of gray aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Horrified, terrified. She feels that she was abducted. She won't even go into detail. She could come to a point, she could almost regress and go into a fetal position and suck her thumb if you force her to talk about it. That's how
Right. Yeah.
horrified
Okay.
she
She was
is.
really traumatized.
And so I wonder, just because I've experienced this in my life, my mother can't even watch Star Trek on TV without
Mm-hmm.
going into a panic state.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested in hearing. Did you meet up with any other people that have experienced that terror?
Oh, definitely. Yes. And one of the wonderful parts of my work is that when I go to very large conferences, such as the International UFO Congress, which I've gone to for every year for at least 21 years, maybe it's 22 or 23 now, that I have the privilege of conducting a large experiencer support group. And so sometimes there are 40 people or 50 or 60 people in each one of those groups that they have nearly every day of this conference. And so I hear from a lot of people, and then during that week of the conference each year, there are several people at least who have regressions with me, as well as all the ones in all the people in Southern California whom I am closer to and who regress. But anyway, there have been a lot of people I've had contact with, one way or the other, about these experiences over the years, and they some of them seem to be a little perplexed, but they're okay with it. They want to know a little bit more. Maybe they're afraid to know too much more because they're doing okay enough, even though it's peculiar. Some people actually welcome these encounters. They think they're wonderful. And then there are other people who are just terrified. They've been traumatized, probably by having an experience young enough in their life to, really leave a very, very bad impression. It really terrified them. And that's a serious thing. That is, it's to be taken seriously when someone is that traumatized. And I don't think it helps to try to talk them out of it. What I have found with people of that sort who've been that traumatized is that if they will agree to have a regression, and if they do have a regression, they will come through that experience of the regression to one of their extraterrestrial encounter events. They'll come through feeling, oh, okay, I see. Oh, I got a sense of what they were doing. I now I understand a little bit more, and I know I was returned, and I know that I've gone on with my life in every other way quite well, so I don't need to be as frightened anymore. In other words, the more they know about what's happened, the more they feel relaxed and comfortable about it. So I have an experiencer support group in my local area in Southern California, and I started that group in 1994. Well, the group is still going. We meet once a month, have wonderful discussions. People talk about what they've experienced in the past or what they've experienced recently, because experiences keep happening to most of them. And it all becomes very normalized, which I think it should. You know, these are very normal people, very intelligent, good people, and they're having these peculiar things happen to them. But they themselves are excellent, perfectly fine people. And they begin to realize that with each other. Gee, that person's really intelligent. That person's a nanotechnologist. You know, he's a brilliant guy, and he's having these experiences. And so is, you know, practicing healing skills, and she's a lovely person. She's having these experiences. So it helps people when they've had these experiences to get together. It helps them to talk about these things. And I think that the regressions are a very big part of this, that they find out things that are simply interesting. And I find that in regressions, if the person wants to know, why are these beings doing this particular thing to me, that they can ask the beings, and the beings will tell them what they're doing and what the purpose is of their doing that particular procedure. They tell them telepathically. The person might ask in words, but out loud, but the beings typically tell them the answer telepathically, and the person hears it clearly in their mind. So, for instance, a group of extraterrestrials might be doing a reproductive process, taking eggs from a woman's ovary or sperm from a man. And they might be quite alarmed and confused. Why are you doing this? And if they sincerely want to know and ask sincerely, they are given an answer. Now, the answer we assume is true, like they have interbred with their own kind so many thousands or millions of years that they are no longer able to reproduce. And they would like to reproduce their species, of course. And they need some of the human DNA and human reproductive components in order to survive. Now, when a person who's experiencing this sort of thing hears this and feels the genuineness of this being said, that puts a different light on it. I've had some clients, some women clients say, look, I don't need any extra eggs. I've had the 2 children I've wanted to have. They can have them. I'm glad they're being of use somewhere instead of just sitting around in my body. You know, and I've heard men say, well, I've had the kids I want. I don't want any more. If they want to take sperm, you know, if they really need it for some reason, that's okay. They can have it. But they would never have thought that type of thing until they had heard from the extraterrestrials that the extraterrestrials really needed for good reason
Wow,
to save their species.
this is fascinating, when we talk about these reproductive experiments, Barbara, I want to ask you, do you think most of us, I mean the human population, do you think that we're mutts? I mean actually alien hybrids, even though very few people realize it?
Well, there are theories. That's all I can say. I don't really know, but there are theories that we were influenced way, way, way back, um, so far back in history that we don't really have record of it, except that the ancient Sumerians kept a record of these things, and according to interpretations of some of their records, cylinder seals particularly, that we were sort of genetically influenced by another race of beings from a different planet, the planet Nibiru, and that they came to Earth way back in what we would call very primitive times in terms of human life, or almost pre-human. And they did a couple of things. They mated with the females of these pre-humans and created a different type of being, different type of offspring. And they also did genetic manipulation of these early sort of human combination beings, and eventually created what we are now, the human being. They added a lot of intelligence and a lot of know-how, and we do know historically that, as far as we can tell, that there was a sudden development of civilization, as if out of nowhere, from apes, hominids, prehumans, and so forth, Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, etc. Then there was suddenly a leap to great civilization and astronomy and mathematics and all kinds of sciences and skills that these earlier people couldn't have. And certainly people have wondered, well, how come? I mean, how did that happen in such a short period of time? Maybe we have been hybridized. That's all I can say. It's a theory that I think is very interesting, and it could be true. I think also, bringing us up to the current time, that there are people who are walking around on Earth who are hybrid beings. They're partly human, and they look enough human to get along here, and they're partly extraterrestrial. And that happens in a number of ways. The hybridization is something that I've really put particular attention to the last few years, and have given lectures about and so forth. And one way is that a regular human being is born in the usual customary way that we do it, which isn't the way with all of these beings, believe me, by any means. But with us, we have our regular birth process with a human mother and a human father. And with some of these, the human mother is taken at about the 6th month or so of pregnancy, taken by extraterrestrials, and injected with some DNA, some genetics from that particular species of extraterrestrials that has taken her for this. And that injection goes right through her abdomen.
Wow.
And through the wall of the uterus and into the fetus.
Wow.
Who's developed enough by 6 months or so that the fetus can take it. And then that fetus is born the usual normal way at 9 months, and is now influenced by some extraterrestrial characteristics. I happen to know a few people personally, whom I've come to know by doing this work, who have had that happen. and the father or or mother has actually told them that this process happened during the pregnancy of that person. I think it is really true. And I've regrets some people, too, who were pregnant and were taken for an encounter and on a medical table on the ship were injected with extraterrestrial genetics and were told by the being who injected them, now this one, meaning this fetus, is exactly the way we want him to be. In other words, with the extraterrestrial influence. So I do personally know several people whom I've talked to at length about that sort of thing having happened. And then there are other ways of reproduction too. One of them is that a human woman, well, even a teenager, reproductively mature enough, in other words, will be taken on what seems to be a UFO, a craft, and is made to copulate with an extraterrestrial male. It would have to be the type of being that could do that, that reproduces in that particular way. And so then she has that extraterrestrial component, that sperm, in her, and she gestates the embryo, and then the embryo is taken in another abduction and raised in a test tube and then in a larger tank big enough to accommodate the growing baby, the growing fetus, and then is eventually born and cared for essentially on the ship by extraterrestrials. And usually they seem to take that woman to whom that procedure had happened. They take, in other words, the mother, biological mother, and she's taken to the ship and shown, sometimes she's shown the fetus as it's developing in the tank of fluid. Sometimes she's taken also after the baby is quote-unquote born, removed from the tank, and is living in the air. And sometimes she's taken to see them as a toddler, and some people are taken to see them yearly as they grow up, their own hybrid children, into adulthood. And there are enough generations of these hybrids that as when they're old enough, reproductively old enough, they mate with another human so that each generation gets to be a larger proportion of human until maybe 4 or 5 stages or generations of this hybridization in one being, who then the offspring is human-looking enough that even born there on the craft can be brought here to live, because that being will be human enough to withstand life here, bacteria, viruses, our way of life, and so forth.
Wow.
So some of these people, I think, are really, really with us. They might at most seem a little bit different, a little, but there are other people, too, who are not hybrids who seem a little unusual.
Yeah.
But they're very intelligent. They function well. The people I know who are hybrids have regular human husbands who know that they're hybrid and accept the fact, and they have nice marriages. And these women work, and they're very, very intelligent. They also seem to have a special mission of a very positive nature. They have a mission of helping humanity, like to raise consciousness or to improve ecological works, to save the environment, to to become more spiritual, help people become more spiritual, more consciously aware, more aware of the universe, more aware of other life in the universe, more aware of helping humanity rather than not caring or rather than harming other parts of humanity. They care about animals and animal welfare, animal rights, treating all animals well because they're part of the whole chain of life here. They care about eating and eating well, eating naturally, and that goes into the not harming animals, but it also goes into what really is good and sustaining and healthy for a human being. So they have many, those are just some examples, but they have many missions that they're on. Some men, I think, and women engineers are occasionally downloaded information for inventions and for advanced technology. They're downloaded information from these beings whom they're connected to, you see, reproductively or genetically. And they receive this information and go on and make some of the great advances that we've seen people make in technology and engineering. And some people do that in terms of health. Some of the great health advances. People have claimed that they didn't originate the answer to that themselves. They were given information. Sometimes they specifically know it's extraterrestrials. Sometimes they just know it's some other intelligence, some other being gave this to them, either through dreams or through just meditation or just cogitating on the problem. The answer comes through from someone else whom they don't see. So it's really a fascinating thing. I think there's just so much more, Helane, that is going on in the world than we know.
Yeah.
We know an awful lot because we have researchers in just about every possible field and aspect of life here on Earth. But still, there's even more. It's amazing.
I'm telling you, I am just sitting here at the edge of my seat right now listening to you. I could only imagine our listeners' reaction as well. It's very intense. Barbara, I'm just blown away by that explanation of hybrids. Is there anything else actually that you could add?
Well, I think that there may be some hybrids here that are not of this sort of altruistic type that I've just talked about. These are the ones whom I do personally know, and they're working with starseed children. They're encouraging people to develop their psychic abilities and their spiritual awareness and so forth. Now, there may be, I have heard, have not seen, but I've heard that there may be other hybrid beings here who do not have such a high-minded intent. I don't think they're here for evil. I have no indication, no reason to think that. But maybe they're just here to, experience life on Earth, that they consider this an interesting place to be. I know that there is a theory, and I underlined 5 times, I underline the fact it's a theory that some of these extraterrestrial groups are creating hybrids and more able to live here, more and more generations of hybrids so that they're enough human to live here because they're afraid that their own planet is no longer going to sustain life. And they need to live some other place. And as they are now, as extraterrestrials, they would not be adapted well enough physically, mentally, emotionally, and everything, to live here, to get along here. So they need to do the hybridization and combine their type with human types in order for those beings to be able to live here, sort of as a refuge, maybe as refugees, shall we say. I don't know about that. I just hear about that, and it's certainly an interesting theory. But if you will, it would be important, I think, to mention some of the other types of things that people experience during extraterrestrial encounters, because it isn't all implants or reproduction or physical exams or even healing. But many people I've regressed a number of times each, have found that in some of their experiences, they're taken to some sort of place of learning. It's probably on a UFO, on a craft, but it seems to be a big room where educating is going on, and they are being educated. Sometimes it seems more like a classroom with a blackboard at the front of the room or a whiteboard and teachers teaching and writing certain things for a whole classroom full of abducted humans. Sometimes it seems to be more like a temple of learning with more ethereal beings inspiring them and telepathically teaching them things. Sometimes it seems to be like, as one client kept calling it, a library, although the library didn't have any books in it. It had consoles, rather like TV or computer consoles, and yet not exactly like either one of those, but similar, where they would look into the screen and they would learn what they needed to learn. In any of these educational cases, there seems to be a mentor, an extraterrestrial mentor, who is with them year after year, experience after experience, and teaches them and guides them and trains them in worthy things. Sometimes people are taught from early childhood to develop psychic skills. And we have many, many cases of children who were abducted. They may not do the regression until they're adult, but they regress back to childhood incidents, many of them, when they were taken and they were placed on a floor with other human children and extraterrestrial teachers standing around, teaching them to move things with their minds and to do other psychic skills that some of our people have. And they're trained in that, and they're also trained sometimes to do physical healing of each other. Even children are taught healing skills. I personally know 2 children who know that they were taught healing skills by the extraterrestrials who they kept getting taken by at night. And they actually did things like healing wounded birds or wounded insects, or their mother even, when she cut herself badly with a paring knife and was gushing blood. These 2 little children who were experiencers and who were taught this leapt off their lunch stools and just started doing this, what looked like Tai Chi movements, and sent out energy that the mother could feel as her bleeding was stopping within several seconds. And the whole cut, deep cut that she had, was starting to come together and pretty much within about 5 minutes, healing.
Wow.
And I saw her the next day. She was one of my clients, and she had just a little faint white scar there already, which usually would take us weeks to get to. But those kids, with sending energy the way they did, were able to heal her. And they were only 3 and 4 years old. I mean, that's amazing. And and so many people, even as adults, are taught healing skills. I think that it's possible that a number of the healers we have here on Earth and massage therapists who are really healing, they have that healing energy, that perhaps some of them at least are taken by extraterrestrials and taught to do those healing skills, and they do it very, very well here on Earth. It's amazing. So sometimes people are taught about space and astronomy and how space works and how people, well, beings, can travel great distances, by folding space and so forth. Even some of our physicists now, really recognized authoritative physicists, are coming up with the idea, or maybe are being influenced with the idea of space travel involving gathering space to you rather than having to travel all the way through it. So there are some people who are really learning from these extraterrestrials.
Wow.
Yeah.
I tell you, Barbara, this has got to be, and I've interviewed so many people,
Yes,
this
I
has
bet.
got to be one of my most fascinating interviews that I've ever had.
Wow.
And I'll tell you right now, like I said, I'm blown away by the information. You speak in an extremely clear manner, and I understand what you're saying. And again, everything you're saying really resonates with me.
Ah, great.
So let me ask you this question before I go on to asking you about crop circles.
Okay.
I want to know, do you believe the general public, the masses, will soon acknowledge that we're not alone in this vast universe?
Well, I think that it's happening, maybe not everybody, but it's happening slowly. And if you look at the internet, it is loaded with websites that talk about this type of thing. And there are many, many conferences going on in this country and other countries. There are countries that publicly know a lot more about this than we in the United States do. For instance, Japan, back in the 1990s, took it upon themselves to deliberately educate their people, to initiate that, to educate their people about the UFO reality and extraterrestrials. And they even, by late in the 1990s, had built a beautiful museum out in the city of Hakui, Japan. And the museum is in the shape of a UFO, and they have in that museum photographs, videos of UFOs, remnants of ships that have landed, that have left little bits and pieces behind or have crashed, and pieces were rescued from it. I don't know if they have any embalmed extraterrestrials. I know they were hoping to. I don't know whether they've gotten that or not. And they held conferences to educate their people. Now, China has been surprisingly open, and we don't hear anything about this. But they've been very open about UFOs and extraterrestrials, and there is a huge Chinese UFO organization in China. I heard about this more in the 1990s and 2000s than I hear about it now, but I think it's still existing. And so this initiative started from the people, but they got the support of the government. And the government gave them thousands and thousands of dollars to print up information about it and disseminate the information. And they allowed photographs of UFOs and so forth to be printed in their newspapers. They have a really different attitude than they have in the United States, where all of that's been kept very hush-hush and very private, very undercover. Brazil is doing a lot about letting their public know. Mexico is much, much better too. Not by the government, but there's a very popular UFO television station there run by Jaime Maussan. And it's very, very well watched by millions of people. And millions of people in Mexico are out with their camcorders taking excellent footage of UFOs all over Mexico. I've seen hundreds of those videos myself at conferences that are brought up here to show us. And so millions more people in various parts of the world are more openly aware of all this. It's growing. There were a lot of abductions in Europe and Scandinavia and South America. More of that, more and more is coming out in the news. It's just amazing. Paul Hellyer, who used to be the Secretary of Defense a number of years ago in Canada, he has said publicly in a number of venues, even I think in the general newspaper, the UFO reality is real. They really are coming here. There are other beings in the universe, and they do visit Earth. There was recently, in April, the citizens' hearing on disclosure in Washington, D.C., spearheaded by Stephen Bassett, who's been working on this subject for years. And he got together all kinds of high-level people who testified to former congressmen, U.S. congressmen, quite a number of them, about what these high-level people had seen and witnessed. And they know that we're being visited by beings from other parts of the universe.
Yeah.
So, it gradually is growing. I think almost every state in the United States, at least at some point, has a large UFO Congress or conference. And they draw, certainly the people who are interested in that and not others, like with any subject. But it seems to be spreading and growing, and then there's so much now on the internet and YouTube videos and all kinds of things. So I think more people just simply bump into it.
I agree with that too. I agree with that.
And they begin to at least wonder. Now, whether we officially ever have a United States disclosure, I don't know. I simply have no way of knowing.
Barbara, I feel so strongly, though, that we're getting closer and closer to it. And
Yeah.
like you pointed out before, in other countries, it is accepted or recognized, and people are willing to say that. And there'll be a time it's spreading. I can see that eventually they're not even going to be able to cover it up. They're not going to be able to cover up. It's going to be so widespread.
Yes.
And so many people will have had these kind of experiences.
Yes.
I think some part of it is you'd have to believe it's possible to be able to see it. In other words, perhaps in my life, maybe in my life I've seen a ship, but I didn't even know it was possible to see a ship, so that I just almost didn't see it. I must have looked right through it.
Oh, you make such a great point there, because there's the old story about how Captain Cook and his ships sailed into one of the South Sea Islands, and they had never seen a ship. They didn't even know they existed. So those ships were out there for days, and the islanders on the shore never even saw them because they didn't know there was such a thing.
Exactly.
Finally, the men came ashore, and the beings had the population there had to know they were existing, because they were right there with them, shaking their hands. But that is, you raise a really good point. If you don't know something exists, it might be there in front of you, and you just literally don't see it.
Well, and consciousness is expanding every day, more and more, and so, but that was a nice answer, and it was interesting to hear about other countries and the recognition, and even the UFO museum that was in. That's beautiful. Now, I have to ask you this. Obviously, we mentioned earlier that you take yearly trips to England, your
Yes,
annual crop circle tour. So I've
I
got to know
do.
what fueled your interest in crop circles. And I need to know also which ETs in particular are creating these crop circles and what is the message they want to convey.
Well, first of all, it was completely a surprise that I got into this. It was a situation that crop circles in England had been happening already for about 10 years, and I had never heard of it, even though I married an Englishman and was going to England quite frequently, but I wasn't hearing about it at all for several years. I mean, I just didn't even know it existed. And then suddenly, at a large conference, a whole life expo, I read in the program guide of the upcoming lectures, and I read that one of the lectures was going to be about mysterious patterns in the fields of Britain. And it had a funny little picture there, not a picture of a speaker, as they usually had, but a picture of a crop circle. I didn't know what that was because I'd never heard of it. But immediately, when I read that, mysterious patterns happening in the fields of Britain, immediately I felt in myself a great flash of light. And the words came to me, we're being communicated with from someone out there. And that's before I was involved in the extraterrestrials, a year before that. So I don't know where that came from, but I was really excited, and I thought, I've got to find out about that. So I went to that lecture, and halfway through, I found myself slapping my thigh and saying, okay, that's it. I'm going there next year to check that out, to England, that is. And I ran up and spoke to the speaker after that lecture, and I said, where do you go? Where do you find them? How do you do it? How do you know where they are? Who are the people I could contact? And he was very helpful. He gave me some good hints. So by the next year, which was the summer of 1991, I did go there, followed the few little clues I had, and made a lot of phone calls. One thing led to another, and I found myself down in Wiltshire County, the right kind of place for crop circles, and started slowly, day by day, meeting in the fields, in the crop circles, met different researchers, and just learned more and more. And I just decided then and there that, okay, I'm in for life. I mean, this is just way too fascinating and wonderful. So I still am interested. And as you mentioned, I lead crop circle tours. So this is my 23rd consecutive year going to England every summer. And for a number of years, about 10 years now, I have actually gone there for my original research first for at least a week, which I'm doing this year. Get the lay of the land, so to speak, find out where the crop circles are, what's going on. And then I meet a group of people flying into the airport in London, and I guide them around for a wonderful, interesting, exciting week, and then take them back to the airport again for them to fly home or go on elsewhere if they want an extended vacation. And it's a wonderful adventure, and basically the main thing that we do is visit the crop circles that are there and the new ones that appear while we are there. So I always choose, as much as possible, depending on my speaker schedule. I usually choose the last week in July and the first week in August. So this year, I have a group going from July 29th to August 5th, and then a second group, totally different people, going August 5th to August 12th. And the first group is fully booked, but the second group, which will be restricted to 8 people because of the size of the minivan I can drive, and I only have me as a driver for that second week. We have eight openings, so 8 people who can come plus me as a driver. We have 2 openings left if anybody is interested. And if they want to find out information, they can go to my website, which is www.barbara, no, Barbara Lamb, MFT.com. I'll repeat that, Barbara Lamb, and the initials M as in marriage, F as in family, T as in therapist.com. And there's a section there that will tell about this year's Crop Circle Tour.
So Barbara,
I would
though,
have to know in the next week if they think they can come.
I have a question for you, though, Barbara. I still want to know, what is the message? Which ETs, who are making these crop circles? Is it Pleiadians? Is it Sirians? Octurians? Is it Andromedans? Who is this? Who are these circles from, and what are they trying to tell us?
Well, as far as the beings are concerned, there are different theories about where these beings come from. I personally don't think anybody knows for sure. We don't really even know if they're embodied extraterrestrials, but the crop circles are certainly made by some extraordinary, talented, creative intelligence. Probably that intelligence is embodied into beings that we would call Pleiadians or Arcturians or Sirians or so forth. But we really don't know. Now, the co-author of my book, Crop Circles Revealed, is a channel, and she channeled, for this book, she channeled 11th dimensional beings who gave information for these interpretations. And those beings said they're made by Pleiadians, Arcturians, Sirians, Andromedans, and Dogons. Up to that time, I had never heard of Dogons being extraterrestrials, but we do know that the Dogon tribe in Mali, Africa, have connections with Sirius. So maybe there is a group of beings out there called Dogons. Anyway, that's what that information said. But we personally, from our own individual experience, we just don't know. We do see beams of light making crop circles. We do see orbs of light making crop circles. We do see what looks like invisible wind moving over a crop field, and a circle is laid down there. So it seems like there's some kind of non-visible force too that makes them. But who is doing that force, where that really comes from, we don't absolutely have proof of. But I do think that these crop circles are not just random doodles. They don't even look like doodles. They look like highly structured, designed symbols, and they do seem to be about communicating something. Now, the simplest thing that we can say, the most obvious thing, I think, is that it does seem like they, whoever they are trying to communicate to us that they exist, that something other than Earth and Earth life exists. Something is coming here and doing these patterns and adding special energies that can actually be measured. I mean, something is really here, and it stays here for a few weeks or months until harvesting. It's not like a ghost or something that you may never see again, even though you keep looking for it. I mean, it's wonderful in the sense that it stays around for weeks or months. And so that we can go there and we can see it and we can feel it and we can experience it for ourselves, and we can fly over them and see the whole pattern. The patterns are obviously structured. They're beautiful. They're very specific. Geometrically, sometimes they're extremely complex and beautiful and balanced, and they show things like the perfect nature of pi, there have been 4 different geometrical theorems that the leading geometer in England discovered in crop circles, that we were presented with geometry theorems that nobody had ever known about.
Wow.
In the history of the world. I mean, this is just mind-boggling. And many of the crop circles foretell astronomical events that will happen. Like, for instance, one will foretell an eclipse of the sun or an eclipse of the moon that will happen a couple of months later. And then, of course, that eclipse does happen. Or they'll show the position of the planets on certain dates in the future. One of the ones that was very exciting that happened in 2010 was that a crop circle showed the exact perfect alignment of planets that would happen on December 21st, 2012.
Wow.
And in December 21st, 2012, yes, indeed, the planets were situated in exactly that relationship to each other.
You must come out of these conferences, out of these pilgrimages to England, like just blown away every year.
I
You must be
do.
on such a high and so charged up. I mean, I would be. And again,
I am.
I want to just remind our listeners again, the name of the book to get more information about the meaning of these crop circles. Judith K. Moore is the channel that Barbara was referring to. The name of the book, Crop Circles Revealed, Language of the Light Symbols, is the book that we are referring to. And I know I'm going to pick it up now because I'm fascinated. But Barbara, we're also running out of time.
Yes.
So I'd like to ask you, is there a closing message you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Okay, quick little thing first is that the books, Crop Circles Revealed, are available through my website, barbaralammft.com. Also, Alien Experiences is available through there. And although there'll be a little delay right now because I'm going to be in England, but then as soon as I get back, I'll send them out if I receive the check. But the overall message is that there is so much going on in the world and in the whole universe that involves so much more than just we human beings and life on Earth. The universe, I am convinced, is filled with intelligent life. And we're lucky enough to have some of that life actually come here. So I think that the more that we know about this, the more that we're open to it, the more we will be able to participate in this universal galactic community. There are councils of hundreds of types of these beings that already meet, and they would like to have people from planet Earth come and be delegates. In fact, some of my regression clients have been delegates, have been participating in those councils. So I just think that the more that we realize the vastness of this intelligent project, the better. Hopefully, the more that will help us to be able to communicate better within humanity and get along better.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Brilliant. So spot on. And Barbara, I thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so
You're
much for
welcome.
being our special guest. I am so happy that we finally had the opportunity to have you on, because
I am too.
what
Yes.
a powerful interview. What a powerful experience again.
Ah,
Oh,
great.
and
It's been a wonderful pleasure, and I'm so glad you're interested.
Oh, very interested. I'm going to be picking up your book actually on crop
Okay,
circles.
wonderful.
And I want to say thank you to all of our listeners for tuning into Embracing What's Real on In 5D Radio. Next Wednesday, July 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our special guest will be Rashmi Kilnani, author of The Divine Mother Speaks. For more information about our upcoming programs, come visit my website, www.insightsbyhelane.com. Until we meet again, remember, dream big, love big, and know you are a divine being and anything is possible. Namaste.
Namaste.